and welcome. My name is Angela Young, and I am the co-founder of Art Hive Magazine, and I'm excited to welcome you all to a Business Skills for the Modern Creator presented by the Broward Cultural Division. Today is session number 5 on how to thrive as an artist, and the topics that we will cover today will be the skills that you need to become a more agile and business-savvy creative for our ever-evolving economy, so that artists and creatives, just like all of you out there, can continue to launch and grow your careers. So, just to give you an idea of what we've done in our past sessions, we have covered topics such as business basics, branding and marketing, protecting your rights, and if you have missed any of those, that's okay. You can replay them right there on either YouTube or Facebook. So, some important things to note before we get started. If you are here joining us live, please use the chat box to your advantage. Share your name, your creative practice, your medium, and where you're joining us from. And also use that to interact with the speakers. They will have Q&As for both of them, so we will be monitoring that throughout the time that we are talking. And also note that there is a break in between both speakers, so you will have time to refill on your coffee. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to start talking first about our first speaker, and he will be talking about making this sale. So let me tell you about him. Ed King is an award-winning art director, marketing manager, and neo-pop artist from Miami, Florida. Before accepting his current marketing position at ArtServe, Ed has worked in ad agencies, honing his skills as a designer and art director of various campaigns focused on political, corporate, and healthcare communication. Ed King Pop Art was King's full-time position for over a decade of art openings and gallery exhibitions. And named in the press as one of the top pop artists in Miami, he was awarded the prestigious Best in Show prize during his final pop art exhibition. He fiercely advocates on behalf of the artists and clients he represents, while acting as an ambassador for ArtServe's mission of inclusivity, diversity, and art as an agent for social change. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ed King to you. Hey, that was a nice rhyme I got going there.
Hey, well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And whoops, let's get this camera right, situated the right way. Oh my goodness. So you can see me. I'm sorry about that. Trying to get into the center of the picture here. There we go. We got it. That's good. So I want to start off by saying thank you. Thank you so much to the Broward Cultural Division for doing this. This is a great program. I've done AEI, Artists Entrepreneur Institute, thanks to Jim Shermer for many, many years. And I've met so many creative professionals. And the number one thing I could say about our creative community is that you guys are active. You want the information. You want to know what's coming in business. You want all the data. And the good thing about today's lesson, and I want to start off with this first slide, is that good things are going to happen. That's the number one thing I can tell you. If you put this stuff to work, good things are going to happen. And I'm not just talking about my module. The whole program is geared for your success. And I want you guys to ask questions. Type it right there in the chat. I definitely want to give you as much information to succeed as possible. So let's get started with the art of self-promotion. And you notice that I put the fun in there because this is all about your creativity. This is all about your style and what you have to offer the world through your artistry. And that's the fun part. Getting to the business part, that's a lot of work. But the other fun part is making the money. And I'm all about monetizing our artistic skills in order to fund our lives. And that's what this is all about. So let's dive right in. I'm going to do a case study for you about my business, Ed King Pop Art. And you can see it right there. It was the brand analysis was that my work was organic, homemade, that I was an expert in what I did, trustworthy, reliable, and accessible. And that's really important because regardless of what people thought of my art style, I defined my brand. And by defining my brand, I was also defining the audience that would be responsive to those characteristics, responsive in the way of pulling out their American Express card and investing in my art through their purchase. Let's keep going. We're going to talk about this sales vision. Selling the product, it really has little to do with your art itself, right? You love your art. You know your art intimately, but your clients and potential clients might not know a lot about you, right? And that's the thing. We need to shift that focus on selling you, your story, your narrative. And in this, it's all about relationships. You're building relationships with your business associates, your colleagues, your clients, and future potential customers. So relationships are invaluable in creating, training, and implementing a sales force that works for you. Everybody in my network, I consider part of my sales force, part of a group of people who hear my narrative, and then when I'm not in the room, those people will sell me the way that I've delivered my narrative to them. So let's dive into that a little bit. When I was working with the Coconut Grove Art Festival, and when I say working with, I mean they decided to use my art in their advertising campaigns. How did that happen? Well, they wrote me this text, and I wanted to share this text with you guys. Make sure you mention the importance of communication. We chose your art because it was bright and lively, but also because we loved working with you. And that's the key right there. In a world of billions of creative people, your art and design needs to be unique, but so do you as a person. That's key. You must stand out. People need to want to buy your art because they like you just as much as they like your art. Now, is that sentence 100% locked in stone? Of course not. Sometimes people just want to buy your art. They don't really care what you're watching on Netflix, or they really don't care if you're a philanthropic person or not. But I can guarantee you there's a whole world of people with a credit card in their hand who are just waiting to see, do you give back to charity? Do you volunteer your time? Or do you create artwork in certain themes? They want to know about you as an individual before they pull that trigger. So this is huge. Let's keep going. So in this thesis, we're going to define distribution outlets because finding places to sell is just as important as selling. And this is all about making the sale. So you have to define, where is that sale going to be made? And in doing that, you're also defining what sectors of the community will be investing in you, right? So I started in my thesis with the media as a legitimate distribution outlet because I can only reach so many people. My network is so big, right? It's only so big. And if you want to think about it this way, the average business professional has 250 contacts, right? So think about that. If my network is 250, but the press has thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of followers, then we want to go to them. We want to make the press a distribution outlet for my products or for your products. So often seen as only a marketing vehicle, this is a great method of educating your sales force, the public, and reinforcing your trust and reliability with the consumer. This is what this is all about: legitimacy, trust, reliability. Those attributes will be the difference between whether you make a sale or your competitor, right? So let's keep going. Let's dig into this a little more. What I did in my business is to establish an affirmative brand message via the press. What is an affirmative brand message? What does that even mean? So let's break it down. Affirmative meaning positive, right? Accessible, easy to digest, something that people can get and they understand it instantly. A brand message, something that defines you. Ed King Pop Art. Art that's fantastically funtellectual. It plays with language. It's cute. It's whimsical, right? And it defines what I do and who I am right in the title. My name is Ed King. I make pop art. Ed King Pop Art. Artwork that's fantastically funtellectual, right? So it's fun and intellectual at the same time. Feeding that message to the press allowed the press the opportunity to feed that to hundreds of thousands of people in the community, leading to a ton of sales. Let's dig into actually how did that work? So we're going to go to the next slide here. I talk about it to the New Times. They publish an article. Ed King makes an offering to the art gods. I do the same thing with the Miami Herald. Next thing you know, my work is featured. My next exhibition is featured as the thing to do that weekend. In the next one, Fresh Art, the king of pop art, on the next slide, you can see how these guys also wrote a story defining my artwork, right? And then with the Sun Post on Miami Beach, they made my artwork the centerfold of their weekend activities. Why is this relevant? Let's take a look at one more. Emit magazine, where they say that I've received widespread acclaim for my series of collections, my formal statements, striking in clarity, childlike humanism. The question is, where did they get that information? My relationships with the press, my emails, my phone calls, my lunch meetings with these people, where I have the opportunity to feed them information. They turn around and write stories and put out articles about me based on the information I provide. And what this does for me is that with the press behind me, with the press feeding the public my stuff, the phone starts to ring. People become intrigued. And there is a legitimacy that you cannot get by tooting your own horn. The press is tooting my horn. And when I walk into somebody's office and I want to do a business deal, and I have the legitimacy of the press behind me, are my competitors going to get that deal, or am I going to get that deal? I'm confident I'm going to get it. And the reason why is because, next slide, because the press has defined my work. I haven't defined it, they have, right? As far as the consumer is concerned. But what they don't know is behind the scenes, this is the effort of lots of phone calls, lots of emails, lots of getting together with these people. And remember, the press are just like you and me. They're just people. Getting together with them, networking, and finding a way to define the narrative for the brand. The art of joy. In the work of Ed King, happiness is popular again. That brand positioning is so important. And I can't stress enough how important it is for you to consider what is your brand positioning right now. So moving on to the next slide, I really want to talk about having a philanthropic profile. It feels good and it looks good. So let's take a look at what it looks like. When I did the Ed King Paints with Autistic Kids, the children of the Carrie Brazier Center for Autism, and you can see this on the next slide, you can see that not only did I donate my supplies, I donated my time, I donated the Ed King Pop Art brand to this group of people. That's fine. That's a giveaway. And you're supposed to do this. This is what life is about, is helping other people, right? I firmly believe that. Whether you're in this for business or just for fun, you're supposed to help others, right? But because I'm running a business, we also make sure that there's a photographer there. We also make sure that there's a press release written. We also make sure that we use the press as a distribution outlet to let the world know that this company has a philanthropic profile. Now, I was talking yesterday to filmmaker and acclaimed award-winning photographer Dan Perez. We were just talking on the phone, And he mentioned something that's relevant to this slide. He said, I was always going to give this stuff away, right? I'm going to give it away for free. I'm not going to charge for it. But here's the kicker. By giving it away, you are putting yourself in the same strata as the most wealthy people in the community who are also supporting these charities. You're invited to the events. You're there. You're able to network with these people. And what comes from that? Business opportunities. Do you do this for business? Of course not. You don't walk into a charity and tell them, hey, create a business opportunity for me, right? But if you're doing this, if you're giving this away, you are putting yourself in a position that a lot of your contemporaries are not. A lot of people are saying, no, I'm not going to give anything away. A lot of people are saying, I'm not going to volunteer, or I'm not going to give my time. It instantly sets you apart. And that's one of the guiding principles at the top of this speech that we talked about, was setting yourself apart, making yourself different. This is one way that I did, and it paid off huge, because charities have something that we all need. They have executive directors and development directors, and those two positions have keys to the entire city. They know everybody, and they can open doors that you can't open yourself. It is smart business to give your art to these charities as a distribution outlet. Let the press tell the public that you're a great person, and boom, the phone's ringing. Make philanthropy. Make philanthropy a part of what you do as a feel-good thing in your business, and align yourself with the most wealthy organizations and people in the community. It's a guaranteed win. So let's take a look at that. I was a 4-year member of the board for Family Resource Center, right? I just gave them my artwork to use on their website. They use it in their email blasts, right? It's a whole bunch of free marketing, and it's a giveaway. But think about the thousands and thousands of people they're blasting my name, not yours, not my competitors, my name out to the community, right? It makes sense. It's free marketing. Let's do this. And it's for a good cause. That's the best part. So the lesson here is, it's not a giveaway. It's an investment in your future as a business. If you consider it a cost, you're looking at this whole thing wrong. This is an investment into yourself. Redefine your paradigm, the way you see this, and you will grow. So let's move on to the next thing. Establish your expert status. Now, this is all about trust, and that's why I put trust there under expert. You want to be seen by the community as the best of what you do. So when they're sitting around thinking, who do we call because we need the best of the best, they have your name front of mind. Let's take a look at that. In the press, on the next slide, you could see that Sophie magazine came out with an article that said the 33 creative minds you need to know back in 2011, back when I was doing Ed King pop art hot and heavy. It was my main concern, my main business. And also you can see how thin I am. Oh my goodness. How much weight have I gained? What happened? The thing about this is, I'm not walking around saying, hey, Ed King's an expert, because that would be weird. But the press is saying Ed King is an expert. So you definitely want to know your stuff, know everything about your brand, know your demographics, know your cost structures, know your consumer base. You want to know all that stuff. But you don't want to go around tooting your own horn. It's awesome to have a piece of press tooting your horn. That way, when you walk into a business meeting or a networking meeting, you're armed with a third-party legitimacy that says, I didn't say I was the best, these guys did. Also, let's do this contract. Let's take a look at the next one. In-person appearances. When people say, can you come lecture? Can you come show your work? We notice there's all these cultural symbols in your work, Ed. Can you come to a lecture or a symposium to explain the cultures that you put into your artwork? Sure, I'm happy to do that. I say yes more than anything else when these opportunities arise. I don't care if they're paying me or not. It means we're going to use their marketing resources to promote my brand. I'm there. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to position myself as an expert. And then whatever press comes out of that, I'm going to turn that into extra press on social media, email blast, all that other stuff, which we'll get into later. Moving into the next one, when the Frank Art Gallery says, can you come to the Frank and give a case study or a marketing speech about your artistry and your artwork similar to what I'm doing right now here today? I say yes, because me being an expert and legitimized by a cultural institution allows me to win in a way that my competitors and my peers in the arts are not winning. I will always say yes to that so that I have one more thing, one more notch, one more win on top of the other people who are going after the same pool of money as I am. So my philosophy is money is viability, but you can only create that viability through opportunity. And these opportunities have to be a yes. You have to say yes and establish your expert status. So let's keep moving on with distribution outlets. I am a huge believer in email marketing. Now, why is that? Well, I used to work in ad agencies. I used to do political campaigns. I believe in the direct touch on consumers. And if you think about this time of COVID, when we've all been locked down, you know how many marketing emails you've received. So here, when you're looking at Miami Art Guide, sure, you could pay Miami Art Guide $320, or $500 is actually their retail price to send out an email blast. And if you look at the next one, it's the New Times, and you can pay New Times $250 per email. But come on, we're individual artists. We don't have $250 every 2 weeks for the whole year just to spend on email blasts. That's supposed to be for art supplies. That's supposed to be for product development. That's supposed to be for other vehicles to enhance our business, not giving it away to the New Times. So we have to be able to use our money wisely on low-cost email services. And on the next slide, you'll see it. Constant Contact, MailChimp, Patron Mail. The list goes on and on. There's so many of these services. But what I can guarantee you, and I'm going to show you examples of this, email campaigns convert you into a source of news, entertainment, and information. And there's one word missing from there: sales. News is sales. Entertainment is sales. Information is sales. If you become a news source to your audience base, I guarantee you, you're going to make sales. And let's take a look at how that happens. Here's an example of one of my email blasts. Just the header, just the top story. I created 13 new pieces of work. I took a picture of one of them. I came up with a headline: 13 beautiful new original paintings released online. And I blasted that out to my list of thousands of subscribers. And what happened? Instant sales. What else happened? Tons of visits to my website. What else happened? Phone calls. If you become a news source, you are giving people permission to interact with you, not your competitors, with you. And that's huge. When you send out an email blast, they have to make a value decision. Am I going to open up the Ed King Pop art email or the Nike one, right? Am I going to purchase this piece of artwork or purchase this new whatever vacuum cleaner that they needed to get for the house? You think that's funny? Who chooses between that? But I cannot tell you how many times I've literally heard people go, well, I love your art. I can pay my light bill next week. I've literally heard that. Giving them permission to choose you first starts with this regular communication, and you have to have an email schedule. Let's take a look at the next slide. Let's take a look at what an email consists of: an image, body copy, and a headline. I went in reverse order. So there's an image of me working at home. How did I get this image? I paid a friend of mine. I called him up and I paid him and I said, come over to my house while I'm working on this series of work and shoot me for a whole day. Take as many pictures as you can. I don't care if it's 1,000 photos. Just take the photos, give me the disc, and I'll pay you money for that. And I get thousands of photos in one session, which means I have a bunch of stories to write. And then I write the story itself, the body copy. And if you notice, there's a link in that body copy that goes directly to my email. That's not my email, my website. And that's awesome. And there's got to be some sort of headline that gets them in, right? Pardon me. The artwork is a stunning new adventure. Well, this is great. They've got a headline to lead them in. They've got body copy that leads to my website. And then they've got a photo to contextualize this whole adventure. This is what we see Adidas, Apple, all the major companies doing. We can position ourselves as a major institution, but still have the authenticity of individual artistry by using the techniques of big business, but having something as organic as me sketching on a canvas. It doesn't get realer than that. The people want a story. They want to be behind the curtain. So let's pull back the curtain a little bit. Give them permission to swipe that credit card. Let's go to the next one. Take a look. How about this? Leah is back in a flagship art piece. Well, guess what? There are people who would exclusively purchase this little angry girl. Is she angry? Is she intense? Maybe she's just pensive. She's got something on her mind. It's not for me to define why people like the work. It's for me to define the work itself, to present it, to show it to them, to give them a story, take them behind the scenes, and link in the body copy that you can see, link to that piece on my website, because if they want to buy it, boom, they can buy it right away. And while I'm talking to you, I want to remind you, if you want to ask me questions in the chat window, feel free. I know I'm talking fast, but if you have questions, I want to address them as we move on. So don't be afraid to pose a question. Let's move on to the next slide to show you a little more. How about this? In the next slide, it shows the press actually interacting with me inside my studio, right? So Channel 10 comes over to do a story about Ed King Pop Art. I don't let them leave. And I'm going to give you a piece of advice. Do not ever interact with the press without taking a selfie with you and that camera. You're not the story. When you do these emails, this is a bit of advice. You're not the story. That camera is the story. Everybody loves to see the photo being taken, not the photo itself. So this is the behind the scenes. There's the reporter, there's the camera, there's me. There's unfinished pieces. You're inside the studio, right? I turn the news into news. So yes, I'm going to be on TV, but it's also going to be on social media. It's also going to be on my email blast, and you can be sure it's going to be in the news section of my website. And yes, you should have one of those as well. This is huge. So Deborah says, you mentioned that you sent your email marketing to thousands of people. How did you develop a list of thousands to send to? Deborah, I want you to know that your answer to this question is coming a little bit later in this presentation. So hang in there. We're definitely going to get to this. Let's go to the next slide and show a little bit more. Email campaigns give you the opportunity to deliver a narrative unique to you. That's my sketch, not yours. That's my creativity. And when I come up with the Clocktopus, which is a really cool character that I put in my artwork, that's something that's right out of my imagination, right? So we're taking our consumer base on a journey, on a creative pathway to ultimately a sale, right? They don't know it yet. They're just following the adventure. But sooner or later, that credit card's coming out when I present them a sales opportunity. Moving on. If I'm going to be featured somewhere like Brickell Art Walk, email blast. Moving on. If I'm going to donate my artwork to a charitable campaign. Here we go again. Family Resource Center of South Florida, once more, the charity that I donated to. I give away that artwork, but I'm at the event, dressed up, ready to network, but I want to show people, look what happens when I get dolled up. Look what I gave away to charity. You want to use your emails as a news source to legitimize the fact that you're giving to charity, that you're a worthy investment. For every dollar they spend on you, they know a part of that is helping the community. It's a great business posture. Let's move on to the next one. What if you have particular people who want to buy your work, like yogis, people into yoga or Zen or meditation, right? I had a whole product line just for them. So let's market specifically to them. Come up with the headline, come up with imagery that's compelling. You can see the two pieces next to each other, and make sure in that body copy that you have a link to those pieces in your email. Very important. You want to customize to your different segmented groups in your email blasts, right? So I have people who love the little girl. I've got people who love the Hamzas. I've got people who love the scholar flies. Everybody loves something different. So moving on from there, what about the reviews? I also sold my work on Amazon, which you could sell on Amazon or Etsy or Cafe Press or Society 6 or Redbubble. I don't care about selling those names. Those are just corporate names. What I do care about are the reviews. If I'm getting 5 out of 5-star reviews, you better believe that's a story that's giving people permission to trust you. That is a third-party legitimization of your work, right? All the elements add up. There's no reason to hold back this information. Put it out there in the world. Let people know that you're an expert with a third-party legitimacy from a company or from multiple buyers of your work. Right here, like there's 1, 2, 3, 4 buyers all giving me 5 stars. That's legit. That 5th unnamed buyer, that person who's on the fence, might just need these 4 people to say, you know what? 5 out of 5 stars, I'm in. I've been waiting for something, I'm diving in. Give people permission to buy your work. So what do you need to do these emails? Let's go to the next slide and find out. Creating emails means you need photography, event documentation like we discussed. You need a story. You need opportunities like the 5 out of 5 stars. That's an opportunity. You need copywriting for sure. You need to write your own stories. You need a lot of proofreading. No matter how good you think you are, there's a mistake in there somewhere. Get your friends, your family, get your loved ones, your professional colleagues. Somebody's got to proof that email. And then, here we go, Deborah, cultivating that email list. It's difficult. It's difficult. Like I said, the average business person knows 250 people. So at every single event that you do, you have to do data capture, right? Data capture is probably the hardest thing for artists to do because they're caught up in the moment. You have to have the presence of mind to have a sheet that says, let me get your email. Or have your notes open on your iPhone to say, hey, can you just type in your email on my phone? And then all those times that people trip up and they reply all, I grab all those emails. Ha 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 ha. It's not cool, right, to just grab all those emails, but this is business and I want to win. And if that means being uncool for a moment and grabbing a bunch of emails, sorry, I'm going to get a leg up. I'm going to find every opportunity. I used to have Christina and I used to have Alex, 2 young ladies who worked for me part-time, $10 an hour, and I would pay them and I would say, go to every single nonprofit website you could find. If they've put their emails public, that's public information, good enough for me, grab it. I don't want to talk about permission, just grab it. Let them unsubscribe later. But I can tell you, with sales that came from California, Indiana, from Washington State, from New York, from people that I never knew, but I was grabbing their information off these websites. And they said, oh, I love this guy. I'm going to buy his work. do you want the sale or do you want to ask for permission? It's up to you. I'm not advocating you do something wrong. I'm saying you have to decide whether there is a reason for you to not be making sales to all of these people out there. You have to decide. Let's keep going with social media because this is also a great way to gather people's interest. This is definitely a legitimate distribution outlet. The first thing in the next slide, you can see some of my posts. You can see a mermaid. On the next slide, you can see this mermaid, Sirens of the Hallows. And you can see that I put my gallery information in there already. I put my logo in there already. This way, people don't have to guess at the size, the medium, right? It's all in there. And then I brand myself with the logo. And I can guarantee you, your competitors are not doing this. I've been selling my artwork for decades, and I've been competing for decades in this field. I can tell you, artists don't do this. But you have an opportunity to set yourself apart. What about the behind the scenes stuff? The one with your hand holding the brush. People love that. When you go to an art festival like Coconut Grove Art Fest, they want to see the badge. The badge is the sell, right? Of course, that big hearts painting looks pretty good too. What about this one? People who pose pictures of themselves. In the next slide, you can see this guy showing himself in the artwork. I'm definitely going to put that on my page and forward that out, but I'm also going to use that image in my next email blast as well. People love posing with the artwork, but they want to do something else, which is really cool. On the next slide, they even love dressing up their rooms and then posting images of their houses with the artwork already hanging. That's email, that's social media instantly. You've got to do it on social and get people to like it, to see it. This gives people permission to say, you know, oh, maybe this works too whimsical for my place, right? When they see it dressed up like this, they go, no, that works. I like it. The phone will ring, the emails will come in. This takes time. It takes time to build this up, but I guarantee you that there's a group of people who only need to see your work on somebody else's wall for them to have permission to pull out their credit card. The social media in that respect is a serious distribution outlet of your brand. So moving on, even when you get asked to be an expert, right? Like when the Mandel Public Library asked me to do a speech on advertising and marketing, I've got to put it on social. It's got to be everywhere. If you go to my social media account today, this speech is on my social media right now. Everything that you touch has to be reflected in these outlets because it returns in interest. Speaking opportunities, which is sales. It's phone calls, sales. Email, do this. Somebody is always watching what you do. They might not be vocal, but somebody out there is watching you develop, and they're waiting for the right moment to swipe that credit card. Let's keep going. The next slide, online sales sites. This is awesome. You heard me mention before Cafe Press, right? Here's a look into Cafe Press, right? You can create and upload a design. You can sell your design, and then you can make money. But let's go to the next one and actually take a look at this. Society6 is actually interesting because their brand message for their company is every purchase pays an artist. Well, I love getting paid. If I don't want to create my own website, I would go right here to Society6 and go, I'm not going to pay for all that product development, but I'll let them do it. And then I'll get a cut of that money. This is a legitimate distribution outlet for another reason, because you want the SEO, search engine optimization, right? You want that every time somebody types in your name on Google or any of those other search engines, you want as many options to show up as possible. So Society6 is going to do SEO for me, then I'll create a profile, no problem, because I just want the name recognition. I want the rankings in Google to go higher and higher. That's what I want. And if that means turning Society 6 into a partner for me so I can get more sales, I'm doing it. Going into the next slide, you can see why this is important. You control the rights to your artwork. You have the opportunity to upload your artwork. You get to set your prices. And you see my big smile because that gives you flexibility. And then you can enable your art for additional products. T-shirts, mugs, bedding, whatever. You can definitely create an entire universe for yourself on these sites without having to have your own website, right? So moving on from there, you can see that they also give great customer service. Your account allows you to explore problems, to look at your earnings. You can, they help you set up your site for success. The customer service here is actually quite excellent. And you can see what Ed King Pop Art looks like on Society 6 right now. And after this, if you actually search Ed King Pop Art, Society 6 will show up in the search window, guaranteed. So let's take a look at one of my products. Right here, you can see Sparky and Gazima, one of my most popular pieces. The original sold, the print sold, and even on Society 6, this print sold. I don't know why people love this piece, but it's one of my best sellers. But what I love about this is how professional it looks. Pro specs at the bottom. You've got a little window where people can have sizing, and moving on to the next slide, you can see even more sizing options, whether it's large or small. You get to add it to your cart. So it's just like having your own website, right? It's just like any other website, Amazon, whatever, where people can buy your product with ease. That's awesome. Going on to the next slide, you can see a close-up of this where you can see the set pricing, $24.99, $39.99, $32.99. And I gotta tell you, people do buy this. I'm no longer doing Ed King Pop Art as a professional business, but I left Society 6 up there just because I have no reason to take it down. But here's what's cool. With no advertising or marketing, these guys are still sending me a check every couple months. It's nuts. People are still buying this stuff. How much is Society 6? How much is their cut? This is coming from Art Circuits. I'm really glad you said that. Now, like I said, I'm not active with Society 6 like the way I used to be. So what I would suggest is after this session is over, later today, go on Society 6 because all of your answers are in their frequently asked questions section. So I don't have that memorized because I'm not in that game anymore. But I would ask you to do the research because there is a legitimate revenue stream for you right here. So let's take a look at other corporate ventures that are germane to online sales. Society 6 we just talked about, but there's also Cafe Press, Etsy, Amazon, and believe it or not, Pinterest, not for sales, but for the SEO. Upload all your stuff to Pinterest and write in all your gallery specs, your name, the medium, the title of the piece, the pricing, all that stuff. And if you go on Pinterest and search for Ed King Pop Art, you can see that I did that. And even now, if you do a Google search for Ed King Pop Art, all my Pinterest stuff shows up. That's SEO working on my behalf. I love it. So you guys should definitely utilize these services, if not for the sales, for the SEO and for the higher rankings. Those higher rankings lead to more visibility. The more visibility leads to more sales. It's a guarantee. So let's keep going with distribution outlets as points of attack. The next slide shows these. For me, my points of attack were festivals, galleries, online, retail, art agents, licensing agents, nonprofits like we talked about, publishers and interior designers. I've worked with all those people. Are you working with all those people? And are you developing a hit list of your own? If you don't have a hit list like this, you got to stop. After these sessions are over, write down who needs to hear from you every single day. And then there's your personal hit list, your website, your emails, direct email lists, events, special appearances, strategic partnerships we're going to get into, and collaborators. So I'm going to take a look at one of those, which is art festivals, on the next slide. The good news about art festivals, and this is something that was a legitimate revenue stream for me, was that you cast a wide net, you get a lot of new buyers, volume sales, but there's a lot of upfront cost. There's a lot of travel expenses, and there is such a busy schedule. It's crazy, but look at all those buyers. That's nuts. There are so many people who bought my artwork from this revenue stream. So let's take a look at why this is important. On the next slide, you can see that the owner of the largest single collection of original artwork from Ed King Pop Art met me at an art festival. Let's move on. The commission of the largest single art piece, the largest single piece of canvas, met me at an art festival. How much do you think they paid for that huge canvas? They started off with a $750 sale at Coconut Grove Art Festival, leading to 3 giant pieces of artwork on their walls in their home. And this is just one of them. Thousands and thousands. I'm talking tens of thousands of dollars by having one $750 sale at one art festival. Do you want to do art festivals? Maybe, maybe not. But what I'm saying is, don't discount the power to meet very, very rich people at these large gathering events. When COVID's over and we're back on the street, take a look at what festivals are in your community and consider it, because it leads to real sales. Now, this also leads to something else, which you have to know about this. On the next slide, these people become super fans. And I mean super fans, people who can't just buy one. They have to get tattoos. There are 6 people walking around on Earth with my artwork on their skin. There's people like this lady who have an entire house full of my artwork. If you go to the next slide, that same lady, this is one of her walls, just one of her walls with my artwork on it. How much money do you think is on that wall, right? The importance of making a sale is finding the different avenues in which these people are willing to spend their money. And if I can draw a straight line from an art festival to a wall full of art like this, I can say for sure, that's a legit revenue stream. So let's keep going, because this is also a place to experiment. Prints, tons and tons of prints. If people don't want to buy originals, my secret was, because you notice they're holding 3, right? They're holding 3 pieces. If you buy 2, you get 1 for free. Nobody ever bought 1. Everybody bought 2 so they can get that free one, because people love games. And that was a game that they played with their wallet, with their money, over and over and over again. It is a legit way to entice people to buy your artwork. Let's keep going. Now, this super fan thing is real. Even up to the other day, somebody wrote me and said that we met you 10 years ago, we love your work, and we want to buy more work this coming Tuesday. Like literally this Tuesday. That's brand loyalty. They're willing to hold off for a whole decade and then go, we're back in for a few more $1,000, right? They already put their deposit down. I'm telling you, this whole super fan thing is real, but you can only cultivate this. You can only create this if you're giving them all of these streams of information, all of these opportunities for you to message yourself as a leader, as an expert, as a good person who gives back to the community. All those elements matter. So I want to talk about art galleries as well. Here's a little bit of how I feel about art galleries. They are market specific. They are style specific. Not every gallery likes pop art. Some like sculpture. Well, that's not for me. There are many artistic restrictions. They're limited list access, meaning they're probably not going to share their contacts with you. There's limited control over the details, and there's probably some revenue sharing. Like they're probably going to take 40 or 50 or 60%. But I can tell you that if you are getting press, curators will want to work with you if they know that working with you leads to press. So that relationship with the press right at the beginning of this speech will help you with art galleries, guaranteed. Let's keep going. What about art licensing? Again, I go from having art shows in galleries, and then I get an email like this where they say, hey, we've spoken in the past. We're receiving your art gallery show information. You can see that this is coming from an email when I was doing Sirens of Elysium, that art show. And these people reached out and said, we've been getting your emails. I feel like we've talked in the past. Let's move on to do art licensing. So when I say that, you have to be amazing at every step of the way, somebody is always watching your communication, and then they dive in when they are ready. So when these guys were ready to dive in with licensing, they had already been watching me for months, maybe years. That's why this is so important for you to be excellent at every stage. So if you move on, we can look at art licensing just a moment. This is taking your work and putting it on everyday products, iPhones, backpacks. This gives you the opportunity to expand your vision way beyond just selling originals or prints. This is about opening up to an entire new set of eyeballs at the tens and maybe hundreds of thousands level, if not millions, if you have the right licensing agent. This is a great distribution outlet. Let's move on to another one, because word of mouth marketing is huge. Networking for artists, I know it's difficult. I know you want to be introverts. I know you don't want to wake up and go to the 7 a.m. Business Network International meeting every Wednesday, which is something I did for 4 straight years of Wednesdays at 7 a.m. But the doors this opens for you is unreal. Unreal as far as the return on your investment of time, energy, and the loss of sleep. If you go to the next slide, remember I said the average business person has maybe 250 people. Well, guess what? If you're networking and you have 40 or 60 or even 100 people who have those 250 contacts, boy, oh boy, the doors start to open. And these could be social contacts, strategic, corporate, municipal, meaning cities or county governments, professional or friendly. This is huge because you don't just want to work with the nonprofit sector. You want strategic relationships, corporate relationships. You want it all. So let's move into cultivating those contacts. Joining meetings like the Chamber of Commerce, being on the board of a charitable organization, municipal art meetings, culture in the city, going to salons that are held by Broward Cultural Division, going to Arts for Learning salons. I'm at ArtServe. Come to an ArtServe event. It's awesome. And then there's strategic relationships like, quid pro quos, and I think that's on the next slide, where the contacts have a common goal with each other. And so if you look on the next slide, everybody has a reason to win, and this goes back to being on the Family Resource Center website. Now, that's just one example, but there's tons of examples. And on the next slide, you can see another one where it was the redefining the relationship with the community for Miami Children's Hospital, or when they did their piggy bank fund, doing the billboards for them. That was huge. Another one was when I was with the coffee scene on the next slide, and you can see that they let my artwork be on every one of their coffee bags with my website, my phone number, my contact information. Another one, the Heart of Giving campaign for a local a community group, Legal Services of Greater Miami. Those guys were really awesome. Then that relationship leading to my work ending up in the hands of the Florida Supreme Court Justice and being at that event, right? All of these strategic relationships end up with sales. So let's take a look at sales. And this is going to be the last section that we talk about. And I can't wait. I hope you guys have a lot of questions. We're going to dive right in, and I'm going to breeze into this. So if I go too fast, don't worry. There will be time for questions at the end. This is art and business sales and contracts. So let's dive right in. How does this even work, man? Well, first, you create whatever you want. And second, what am I going to do with all this money? I don't know what to do with this big pile of money. Obviously, it's a little harder than that. Let's dive into it. So the first thing I want to tell you about sales, you want to know who your customer is and what they want from this relationship. You also want to know what your key delivery system is. And my industry is art, right? So I have to be able to say, I have to be able to tailor to art buyers, to brokers, retail outlets, production manufacturers. I have to exercise flexibility there. So let's take a look at one of the corporate jobs that I did. One strategic relationship, remember that Heart of Giving campaign, the Legal Services of Greater Miami? And let's go to that slide so we can see it. Remember that? Well, if we go to the next one, we can see that that relationship started out really simple. They said, we want to create an award for this Chief Justice. And I said, let me do some sketches. Really light, really simple. And we came up with this simple design. And then quite separately, I also was working on their contract. And here's a copy of what that looked like. And we can dive into this real quick. If you actually look at the blown up slide where it shows a little closer detail of this, I think it's the next one, you can see that I valued the creation of my Love Lotus, which is what I called it, at $2,500, right? And the donation of the artwork value was $3,500. I spelled it out for them. The licensing value was $3,000. The total value was $6,500 for this deal, but I was only charging them $2,500. Why did I do that? First of all, they're a charity, and I didn't want to blow up their budget. I wanted to do the deal that was equitable for both sides. I can make money, and they don't have to blow up their budget. But there's another reason. I wanted to do this because I wanted, more than anything, their contacts, their networks, and I wanted to be in that room and shake all those hands. The networking was more important than just blowing up the budget. So $2,500 for this deal. So if we go to the next slide, you can see there was the proposed image in Illustrator, and then there was the finished fabricated product in the hands of the Supreme Court Justice. This moment of being able to be there, being able to be on their posters, in their invites, in their email blasts, in their social media, but then also the networking opportunities, all of that was part of the structured deal. So if we go to the next slide, actually, there you go, where you can see me at the event, I had a display of work. So not only were there contract sales, but there were original art sales and opportunities for me to network and handshake for me to get additional sales. So let's take a look even deeper into this. What about a commissioned art sale? So on the next slide, somebody says, hey, we want to commission your work. And I say, great. I'm going to do a sketch. And when I finish the sketch, here's the piece. And I believe I sold this for something around the tune of $5,000, right? No big deal. $5,000 sale, easy. But if we move on to the next slide, you can see that I didn't stop there. So I got the original sale, but then because I'm the owner of the intellectual property, I also reproduced that on Canvas. So Canvas G Clays, more sales. Then art licensing opportunities, luggage, mugs, t-shirts, more opportunities for sales. Let's take a look even further. corporate gifts. Now, this is something that I love to do. I get contacted by a travel company that says, we want to do corporate gifts and we want to work with a local artist. So they contact me and I instantly give them a menu of options, and let's look into that. I give them canvas prints, and from their email, which says they need it to be between $25 and $30, 475 pieces, around 9 by 11 inches, super easy. I take their specs and I invent, on the next slide, the Ed King Pop Art Corporate Gift Guide. I never had that. I invented it based on the email. And invention is what do they say? Invention is the mother of all necessity, right? So I created the Ed King Pop Art Corporate Gift Guide, and we go to the next slide, and I design this piece where it has the front and back, so you can see the piece is nicely stretched with gallery wire. The specs are there, $28 per unit, so I'm within their pricing structure, which comes out to $13,000. But if you go to the next one, I give them another option for matted pieces, and then you can see options. Maybe they want the waves, maybe they want the jazz, and if we keep going, maybe they want the one with the trees and the bass guitar. And if you go to the next slide, here's what's really important. 50% due up front, all major credit cards accepted, balance due upon delivery, and all sales are final. If they give me that deposit, that's my deposit. That's not going anywhere. And here's one more thing. I control the intellectual property of that piece. Now with arts licensing, it's not always that you control the intellectual property. That's part of your contracting. But it does allow you to put your artwork, on the next slide, on everyday objects like phones, phone covers. But you have to have some sort of brochure so you can see that I define my licensing brand. Fun, playful. If you keep going, you can see examples of the artwork. And if we keep going, you can see that I define a message about the branding opportunities with my artwork, the brand licensing opportunities. And you can do this anywhere. On the next slide, you can see that there was the licensing expo in Vegas. This happens every year, but they also happen in Dubai, Tokyo, London, all over the world. There are so many opportunities for you to license your artwork. So let's talk about the tools of the trade, and we're getting to the end here. So I hope you have your questions ready. You need to learn to produce, and let's take a look at the next slide. You need to learn to produce, or you need to learn to pay somebody like me, who's a professional graphic designer, pay me gobs and gobs of money to do it for you. So it's really good if you can do it. Some of the tools that you need, and something that I can guarantee that I used in every aspect of what I talked about today. On the next slide, you can see Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, After Effects, Premiere. Everything that I did in my presentations, in my social media, in my corporate jobs, in my ability to reach out to a grassroots audience of supporters involved these tools. If you want to make sales, you either need to hire somebody who can do this really well for you, or you need to learn how to do it really well for yourself and set yourself apart. Create a brand position that sets you above where your competitors are. None of my competitors had a corporate gift guide. Innovation has to be at the root of your governing philosophy. Doing things that other people are not doing. That is innovation. And if we keep going, you can see you have to do this email. You just have to. Messaging for me was twice a month, so every 2 weeks, all year long. And every single week, going to a business networking, carving out time every week to network, whether it was at BNI, Business Network International, a Rotary Club, a Chamber of Commerce, or something. And if you go to the last slide, and this is my last slide, this is the most important slide. You're going to hear a lot of people say, and these are a lot of your fellow artists as well, you're going to hear a lot of people say, God, you always talk about yourself, conceited, or you're all about your own thing, or blah, 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 blah. Stop. Stop right there. Falling in love with yourself does not make you vain. It does not make you selfish. It makes you indestructible. Do not let other people who are not paying your bills to define your worth. This is your art, your career. Are you in or are you out? If you're in, you have to be your biggest fan. No one's going to wake up and pay your bills for you. I'm telling you this because I did this for 14 years of a 46-year life. That is a huge percentage of my life spent winning in the arts. I want you to win. And you have to be your biggest fan, indestructible and impervious to all this other garbage you hear out there about inauthenticity or being too commercial. Forget it. I want to make money and I want to be able to travel and explore this world with revenue that I made from my two hands right here. I did it. I know you can do it. And I can't wait to see you guys be successes. It's going to be amazing. If you have questions about any part of this proposal, I'm so used to doing business. Any part of this presentation, please, let's have it. I would love to answer your questions.
Hi, Ed.
Hi, Ed.
Hey.
Hey. So, speaking of questions, started and diving in. I have a couple, and I want to make sure to address all of them.
Cool.
So we have, and let me populate her question on the screen here. So she's asking, how would you incorporate older newspaper articles for the millennial art world?
That's interesting. So I'm trying. There's a lot to unpack in there because how would I incorporate older news articles? I have to assume that you have articles, but they're from way before. And now the world is populated with a bunch of millennials, and how do you relate to these new crop of people? So let me get into that. First of all, you saw a lot of stuff that I had was like 2012, 2011, like a lot of old articles from my previous life as a pro artist. Legitimacy is legitimacy. So what I would do is be able to scan those, have them digital, and you can always do those throwback posts where you can say, hey, remember when this article came out? Boom, social media. Hey, remember in your email? You send out an email saying, hey, remember that time that they said that I was one of the art people you needed to know in South Florida? Boom. You can make what's old new again in creative ways so that you can keep that legitimacy, but don't sit on those old articles. You should be cultivating new relationships with new press and finding new ways to legitimize your business through the press. Don't just rely on the old ones.
Perfect. Here's a great question from Kim. She's saying, what does one need to do to protect one's artwork?
Okay. First of all, and I know this is the Achilles heel to every artist listening right now, you should be copyrighting your work, paying the money with the Copyright Office to copyright individual works or bodies of work. Now, the Copyright Office will allow you to do bodies of work, so you don't have to pay the $30 every single time you have a piece of artwork. I was notorious for coming out with bodies of work of 100 to 200 pieces at a time. So you would really, I would do bodies of 100 or 200 at a time through the Copyright Office. Now that's number one. Number two, if you're really serious about protecting your artwork, you should pay the money and have a consultant meeting with an IP lawyer. That's intellectual property lawyer. Even if it costs you $500, the information you will get from that $500 is better than sitting around for the next few years worrying about whether you're protected. Spend the money, invest in yourself, and get that IP attorney on your side.
Perfect. And there's actually was, Kim, just so you know, there was a previous session about protecting your rights with a lawyer, Serona, who does go into more detail about that you can watch as well. So here's another question I thought that was great from Dave. He said, do you have any contract templates or maybe where one can find one?
Aha! Yes. So, okay. This is a really big question. And so what I'm going to tell you is, in this presentation, I showed you one of my proposals. It wasn't a contract. It was a proposal. That is my intellectual property, and that those relationships that I have with people that I've done business with are really mine. And so I don't share those because that's my inside baseball. It's almost like showing your taxes to a third party, unless you have to, unless it's H&R Block. I'm not really going to do that. However, there are a bunch of online business tools for contracts for artists that you're a Google search away from. There's, I would tell you to check out Americans for the Arts. This is a group that's dedicated to business professionals who want to rise in their artistry and have legitimacy in business. Go to Americans for the Arts and check out what they have, what resources they have for contracts.
Perfect. This is a question that what's your opinion on this from Oliver, saying, how do you get started when you have no income? Valid, very valid question. And the old adage is that you need money to make money. So maybe you could just touch lightly on that thought.
Okay, so first of all, let's start with the end of your sentence. You need money to make money. Yes, you just heard me tell somebody, spend the money, get an IP lawyer, right? Invest in yourself. You might think that you don't have money, but what the calculus really is over what period of time. You might not have money today, right? Because you're paying your bills, it's COVID, a lot of people are out of work or furloughed. A lot of Americans are facing reduced or zero work hours because of COVID. Understandable. However, what you can do is put aside any, and I mean any piece of money. Get the app Acorns, for example, and let that bleed you $25 a week or $25 a month and say, I'm going to start my business plan in 6 months. And I'll have a little nest egg that I don't touch because this app is just bleeding my account, right? If you're savvy about your moves over the next 6 months, remember, I did this for 14 years. What's 6 months, right? What's a year, right? You can start slow, build up a little nest egg, and during that time also build up a business plan. And please send me an email and go, Ed, what about this? What about this? I'd be happy to help you. But what I'm saying is, don't let today stop you. You might not have money today, but you have to see beyond the moment. And that's marketing advice. That's not just about money. I tell that to all my marketing clients. You have to see the 3, 5, and 9 year plan. If you're looking about 1 year or 2 years, it's the wrong way to look. Somebody has to think about year 5 and year 6. You should do that with your finances.
Perfect. We have another question here. Lots of questions for you, Ed.
Okay, I love this question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. How do you get artistic licensing and move to print on products? What needs to happen from their end as the artist?
All right. First of all, I love this question because you get to do the thing that I love to do, which is travel. Go to Orlando and go to the Acres. And I think it's like Acres, like farmland, like Acres show. Go to New York and walk the halls of Surtex. Go to Las Vegas in June and walk the show for the International Licensing Expo. If you want to go to London, you want to go to Dubai, that's on you. But what I'm saying is, before you spend real serious money having a booth, and I'm talking $10,000, $20,000 to be an exhibitor, be careful. Shake every single hand at Surtex, shake every hand at Licensing Expo and Acres in Orlando. Sorry, that word's weird. And start doing your research. Your research will inform your next moves, whether you get a booth, whether you start phone banking all the business cards that you received. But the first move would be to immerse yourself into their world. You have to remember, they see people like you every show. Somebody who tried it once and never returned. You have to be persistent. You have to make your name known, and you have to give them a reason to give you that phone call, or like you saw in my presentation, you have to give them a reason for them to reach back out.
Perfect. I'm scrolling through the comments here and making sure that we've addressed everyone's questions. So one of the questions that I had personally from your talk, you spoke about in your presentation about actually giving out artwork for free and
Yes.
using that your advantage. So what do you say to the artist that is sitting there going, well, I don't know about giving away my artwork for free. What do you say? What's your rebuttal to that person that maybe doesn't feel comfortable doing that?
This presentation was the way that I succeeded in my life. So I defined my own values. My values might not be for you. So that's number one. Number two, I want you to remember the word giveaway is like one of those other words where the people say too commercial or all that stuff that's what I consider lack or not prosperous thinking. You really want to think of it like this. Are you giving it away or are you investing in an opportunity? If you look at it as a giveaway, like what you're doing is you're creating a zero-sum game. This is mine. I'm going to keep it. And I'm not going to share it with anyone unless they have a credit card. That's perfectly valid. You can do that. My philosophy is I'm going to share with as many people as possible. I'm not going to worry whether some kid in Germany is downloading my art and making t-shirts about it. I'm not going to put a watermark on my art. I want as many human beings to interact with Ed King Pop Art as possible. Because if you compare both philosophies, I'm going to win. There's no way that I lose if more people are interacting with my work under whatever circumstances. Now, let's talk about the giveaway. I only said it in terms of charity. We're supposed to give to charity. That is our job as humans, is to help other humans. The thing I can help with, right? I'm not a doctor. I'm not an auto mechanic, but I make art. So here you go. If you guys can fundraise off this art, let's put it another way. You're going to create a pathway for people to buy my work. The money goes to you, but my art goes into their homes. And now you're going to create fans. And we know by my presentation, you can't just buy one. You're going to buy 6, 7, 8 pieces, guaranteed. If this charity is going to wet your whistle and get you enticed in my work, that means they're not enticed by your work. You're my competition. I'm beating you on this philosophy. I'm telling you, redefine your paradigm. Set aside this idea of ownership, like it belongs to me. Your work is meant to be in the world. Otherwise, why are you creating it? Otherwise, why are you here for making a sale? This is literally about growing sales, but you have to give them a little taste. You have to. You have to give them a little something.
Perfect. I thought this was a nice question here. How do you walk the line of being a fine artist, but also offering more affordable art and products?
I love it. Okay. Jim Shermer in the past had me doing product mix as part of this presentation, and I think we're missing that. I think that's a great module for us. First of all, original artwork is necessary because that's what pays your major bills. $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 sales. Yes. But you have to do price differentials, meaning if somebody sees a piece of work, it's $5,000, but they know they can get a canvas print for $500, they'll probably buy it. Now, what about the other people who say, I love your canvas print, but I've got 2 kids in college, a car, a mortgage. I need to spend $100 on the paper prints, matted paper prints. So now we're talking about $50 or $40, right? I had 2 print categories, $20 and $40. Buy 2, get 1 free. Now this goes back to the other question of a giveaway. Was I giving away 1 for free? Or the cost of what paper is? Is it a giveaway? It's cents on the dollar, but they're literally doubling their investment, right? It's not a giveaway, and it adds to my product mix. Boom, 2 questions, 1 answer, got them.
Perfect. I like that. And I know that you also talked about when you go to an event, for example, that you were giving the giveaways to, and you talk about when someone doesn't agree with that aspect. I think a lot of what you're talking about too is the mindset. You just talked about the psychology of the piece of paper and cents. Yeah. How does an artist continue to adapt a new mindset? Because it's funny, you can have the same product and you change your mindset, and all of a sudden you see something differently you didn't see before. How do you want to encourage all of these artists and creatives to change their mindset?
I want them to do the exercise that I was asking earlier. So when you have a moment after these sessions are over today, stop for a minute and define what your brand analysis is. What do you stand for? What are your values? Who are your customers now? Who do you want them to be in the future? Where are you selling now? Where do you want to sell in your future? All of these will create for you the pathway to what you should be doing with your business. Some of you will have answers that absolutely say that you shouldn't be giving your art away, or you should be charging so much, or you should be in certain industries. Other people's answers will be like, I need to be on 3 charity boards, and I need to go to the licensing expo, right? Everybody's going to have a different thing because we're also different artists. Fine artists, dancers, musicians, sculptors. The way we approach this is also going to be vastly different than my approach, right? That's why I'm saying what I did was for me. You have to define success for you, but I can tell you the one thing, and Angela, this I can't stress this enough. We can say the word business all day, but we're people. We're human beings. We all have wants. We all have desires. We all have the need as humans to connect. We all want purpose. There is an actual psychology to understanding what your needs are as an artist, but also understanding what are the needs of your consumer. They need to feel validated. They need to feel that they have a sense of control. They might be going through COVID, but buying your artwork might uplift them even though they're out of a job, right? We don't get to define the worth of our product to the consumer because that's up to them. What we can do is present it in a way that gives them permission to pull the trigger. And in that sentence is a whole bunch of psychology. So what I would say is define your values and try to understand the values of your consumer.
That's perfect. I saw in one of the questions, someone was asking about your website and where people can continue to follow you and your products. Where can they go to do that?
Okay, so this is a really important part of this. I closed my business, and for my own reasons and my own values, I closed my business and I turned off everything. There's no website anymore. It used to be edkingpopart.com. It's gone. Society 6 is there. I don't look at it, right? I work for ArtServe today, and I am an ambassador for this organization that represents arts of all genres. And I'm passionate about being the best at what I do where I am today and advocating for the best interests of artists. I love it. I love it. It is a whole new chapter of my life. But if you want to get business advice, If you want to just reach me, write me an email. But there's one more thing. If you become a member of ArtServe, you get free marketing consults from my office. Become a member and you get all of this as much as you want.
Awesome. So they can also email you and visit you on Facebook at Hey Ed King.
Hey, Ed King.
Yeah. And also check out ArtServe's website. So thank you for all of your valuable information. I know everyone was going crazy writing questions, so I hope we addressed as many as we could. And I know that everyone is taking away a lot of valuable information today.
Angela, first of all, thank you, and thanks to Broward Cultural Division. This was amazing. And I just want to say thank you to all the artists. The last thing I'm going to say to you before we say goodbye is I believe that you can do this. Just do your homework, but you've got this. You can make this happen. I know you're going to be a success. And Angela, thank you for this platform. This is so valuable for artists, and I'm glad you guys are doing this.
Thank you so much. Well, I know all of you have learned a lot, and if you're like me, you're excited to continue to get more of this, but you'll have to take a break first, because we're going to take a break till 10:45, and when we come back, we're going to have an interactive workshop with not just one, but two amazing women. So see you in 15. Hey everyone, it's Angela here, and welcome back to Business Skills for the Modern Creator, presented by the Broward County's Cultural Division. And I'm excited for our second half because this will be interactive, and we're going to have two amazing women. So they're going to be discussing how artists can look at where they are presently in their own work, where you all want to go, and also to start thinking about what important assessment tools you should be using. But first, let me introduce both of them and tell you a little bit about Mitzi Sinnott and Heather Pontonio. So Mitzi Sinnott has been named by Campus Activities magazine as one of the top 5 diversity speakers in America. She is a performance artist, activist, and educator. And Mitzi's unique family saga called Snapshot has been featured on PBS nationwide and on the stage in South Africa, Scotland, Sweden, Brooklyn, and campuses across America. Mitzi's company, All Here Together Productions, utilizes her expertise to talk about conversations on race and class across industries and interests, building more tolerant communities, learning from the past, and reimagining our future one story at a time. Heather Pontonio is a senior program director at the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation, where she is responsible for national strategy and administration of the art program portfolio focused on professional practices for both artists and curators. Heather has been instrumental in the launch of Artists Thrive, a national tool to assess and improve conditions for artists. Heather holds a master's degree in public administration from New York University and a bachelor's degree in arts administration from the State University of New York at Fredonia. So, without further ado, I will add Mitzi, and she's going to kick it off.
Hey, good morning. So exciting to connect with you. I'm Carmen Mitzi Sinnott, and the Artists Thrive Initiative welcomes you. So the name of this workshop is Taking Control and Navigating Yourself Towards a Thriving Career. So Ed, he gave great information, a lot of strategy there too. We're providing support and tools and reflective ways to reflect about your work. So how's everybody doing? I'm actually streaming today from my hometown area of Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia. Yep, in the Ohio River Valley. And I say all 3 states because we're 2 minutes away from each other. And I would like to say that this land that I live on, is the place of some of my ancestors, my Shawnee and my Cherokee ancestors. And I'd like to acknowledge them and their lives because they made a way for us to connect here today. So my pronouns are she, hers. Y'all ready to do this? Great. Can we get the next slide? So for those of you who always like to know where you're driving, that's not necessarily me, but we have an agenda. Here it is. We're going to start out with a question for you, a history of the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation and Artists Thrive origins. We got question responses. We always want to hear from you throughout this whole thing. What is Artists Thrive? Survey questions and conversation and a chat. And then how are others using the Artists Thrive initiative? And we save the best for last, the Q&A with you, because we're really here for you. We want to hear how you're doing and how we can support you. So next slide. My nose is really itching, y'all, all of a sudden. So here we go. First, interactive. That's the question. What does thriving look like for you? Is it a diverse creative life? For me, I'm thinking about performing as a performing artist. I am a performing artist, teaching, doing community development work. And then I've got to have freedom for enjoying friends, having a loving relationship and joy. So to me, when I think about what thriving looks like, as I'm maturing into this, I want to have all those sort of things. So how about we start off right off the bat? I'm going to set us some music, and we want to hear from you in the chat, and Angela is going to help me out with that. I'm going to play a little bit of music from my friend Kevin Weekly, and let's take a few seconds to start writing. What does thriving look like for you? Y'all ready? Hit it in the chat, please. Yeah. So everybody's going to have a different definition. That's what Ed was like. Everybody's different. We know that. And that's the beauty part. Hey. Yeah. So what does thriving look like? If you could put that in the chat, it'd be great. Because we want to hear and read some of that so we have it as discussion. I don't know if we have a delay. So I'm going to pause here. Hey, I see Tanya Adkins, Dave Batia, is that right? Or Batia? Samantha, Vicky, and I see Story the Animus. Being able to pay my bills. Here we get some of the what is thriving. Yes, being able to pay your bills with my art and helping others create stories of their own. I love that. Tanya says, thriving to me is being complete in all aspects of my life. That's exactly right. That's what I'm talking about too. Anybody else before we move on, what thriving looks like for you? Is it, comfortably paying for your pet's food and not having to worry? I remember those days when I was a kid. Both my parents are performing artists. Doing what you like joyfully based on your values and making money at it, baby. Make some money and enjoy. Good. Regular creativity, regular sales. This is from, am I saying your name, Batia or Batia? Artist community, appreciating grants, live art events where all my gifts come together, all your gifts come together. Like everybody's talking about being a whole human being. No more sacrificing until we can't create anymore, right? Thriving, happiness, love, work, balance, being creative. Yes, Cheryl, thank you. And Kim, freedom to do things and go places and be creative and productive. Chelsea, respecting the creativity in and around me. Oh, I like that one too. Everybody, great. Thank you. Cheryl says, thriving, happiness, love, work, balance. Dave, being able to help the world be happier via my art. Awesome. Alina, creating impactful art and raising awareness. And then Harif still. Oh, sorry. Apologize. I wish we had sound that I could hear you. Tell me. Evolving and progressing to stability and financially, emotionally, professionally, spiritually, artistically. Awesome. And there's so many more. Please keep them coming, because Angela and my co-facilitator, Heather Pontonio, we will go back to these and pull out some ones and continue reading your peers, all of us artists around the world. So thank you. I see someone else, Eduardo, I want to say this, my daughter has opportunities to grow and develop. Yeah. So keep them coming, please. So I'm going to hand it off to my co-facilitator, Heather Pontonio.
Thank you, Mitzi. So keep those comments coming. We'll come back to them, as Mitzi said, in a few minutes. My name is Heather Pontonio, and I use the pronouns she, her. I am coming to you from Bethel, Connecticut, on the native lands of the Poconoke, the Paugussett, and the Wappinger territories. And as Angela said in the initial introduction, I am the Senior Program Director at the Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation, and I also serve as the backbone support for the Artists Thrive initiative. The Emily Hall Tremaine Foundation has been funding professional practice programs for artists across the country for over 20 years. You'll see on the slide here a variety of organizations that we have supported across the country. And we've also convened those organizations every year so that those organizations themselves connected as a network and had professional development in their own work. And around 2013, the conversation generally aligned with a question around assessing the work that was being done and thinking around how professional development can be thought of more holistically across all of the work that organizations were doing and that artists were also doing. And the concern was professional development is often pigeonholed into one program, one area of an artist's time or of an organization's work. And so the question was, how do we change the conditions? How do we think differently about the work that is being done? And how do we measure that work in a variety of different ways? And at the point in 2013 when these conversations were happening, there really wasn't anything in the country for us to use as a reference point for this work. But what I want to do is show you in the next 3 slides an iceberg model that helps kind of really ground us in what we're looking at in this work. So this is the first version of the iceberg model. All 3 are the same model, just with some different text. And part of the reason we're sharing it in 3 different ways here is one of them may resonate more for you than another. So in all of these slides, you'll see that the above the water area is the events, the things in the world that we see that is visible to others. Below the surface are patterns, structures, and mental models. So it's a pretty basic image here to think about, but those are things that we all have under, that are often invisible inside of us, and often not seen by the world in the work that we do. But if you think about it, an event or something at that top of the iceberg that's rocked, maybe COVID's rocking you, maybe the way that you sell is, that may not be actually causing you to shift your pattern structures or mental models below. But if something deep within your mental model or structure is shifting for you, you may be really noticing the events and how that's shaping up in your work. So if we go to the next slide of the iceberg model, you'll see, and this is a touch harder to read, but the triangle on the left in the iceberg shifts the statement of events to our knowledge and skills. And it shifts what's invisible below the surface from the patterns and structures and mental models to a statement of our opinions and our values, the qualities and the driving factors in our world. And we can look at that, as you'll see on the right here, in 2 different ways. What's visible is what we do, and what's invisible is what we think and what we want and how we feel. So those are really deep diving down in, but how do we look at that in a way that lets us shift the work that's being done? So we go to the final version of the iceberg model here. We're going to spend a little more time digging in right now. And what I have done is added the red text on the right of this image to give an artist explanation of what each level could look like. So from the events, what's at the top? What just happened is the question there. The example given in the visual here is you catch a cold. Well, maybe from an artist standpoint, it's that you always put off submitting to do your taxes till the deadline. So you wait to the very end to do it. Below the surface, what are the patterns and trends in that? From their example, maybe you catch a cold because you're sleeping less. From the artist example, maybe you put off doing your taxes because they take days to do and you just don't really want to do them. But you do them every year, you hold off and you delay. In the underlying structures below that, we see the influences on the pattern. So from their example, maybe there's more stress at work, maybe you're not eating well, maybe there's difficulty accessing healthy food, which is leaning the reason that you're sleeping less and therefore catching a cold. From an artist standpoint, maybe you often owe the government money. Maybe you hate doing paperwork. Or maybe you don't keep your receipts, and so it makes it really hard for you to do them. It takes many days to do them, and the pattern is the same, and you delay doing your taxes. But what's really deep underneath all of this is where our mental models are, and those are the beliefs. So from their example, maybe you feel that your career is the most important piece of your identity, and that healthy food is just too expensive, and rest is for the unmotivated. And therefore, you spend way too much time working and getting stressed and not eating well, and catching a cold happens because of this. From an artist standpoint, maybe you feel that the government just doesn't care about artists and loves to audit artists. Maybe you feel that doing your taxes takes hours of work and it means many less hours making your art. So if you think about this, if you go down to those deep levels in the mental model, if we were just to touch it at the top, maybe You say, okay, I'm going to start submitting my taxes a week or so before, but it doesn't change any of the ways you're thinking, right? But if we go deep down and we say, what if you change the way you thought about taxes and you thought differently in that actually doing your taxes is the time for a party. It's a time to celebrate and say, look at all the financial success I had in the last year. Look at all of the art projects I did. Look at the new buyers I had. It's a chance for you to stop and celebrate everything you did. Puts a very different frame on doing your taxes. And maybe you don't want to delay doing them anymore because you want to be able to have that party and celebrate the work that's being done. So it's a lot about the work that we do and how we think. And that is really where Artists Thrive came to be. So if we can go to the next slide, Artists Thrive started in 2015 with a very small group of artists and administrators, mainly from our grantee network. And if you go to the next slide, we are now at over 300 artists, administrators, educators, and funders all across the country who are actively involved in thinking about Artists Thrive, using it in different ways, and spreading it and sharing it, and providing us new content and ways to look at these tools. So on the next slide is just a nice, framing of what Artists Thrive is. Artists Thrive goes down to those deep mental models in our thinking and asks us, can we change the narrative in the field that will allow us to raise the value for artists in every community? In the coming minutes, we're going to get into the details of Artists Thrive, but simply think of it as a navigation system. Artists Thrive helps you see where you are, where you want to go, what is important to measure, and how we can improve in ways that benefit everyone involved. Can we flip to the next slide here? And I understand that this is still obscure and a bit vague of what is Artists Thrive. We are going to get into those details, but I want to make sure that you know these important facts before we jump further in. One is that it's a national tool. It has been created by users and organizations all across the country, and a great way for us to start to talk together about how we can change conditions. Artists Thrive imagines the world we want, and it helps us plan backwards in order to get to that point. Artists Thrive was built by the users of these tools. It is very much a grassroots, community-driven work by those in the field doing the work. Artists Thrive is completely free. There is no charges to use it. There is no login to get onto the site. You can go to artiststhrive.org right now and start using the tools. There is no barrier to entry. The content in Artists Thrive is a starting point for you, but it's designed to let you customize it the way that it's most appropriate for your thinking and for your work as an artist. And as we saw in some of these thriving comments, it is really designed for you to think about thriving and use that as your lens as you're going through the tools. Artists Thrive is designed for honest self-reflection. You'll see when you go into the site, there is no tool for you to submit it to a higher force or tell someone how you're doing. It's about you getting engaged in a way that helps you take control of your career. This is the first time that we've had a tool across the country that artists, administrators, funders, educators are all using shared language, a shared standard, and a way to think about our practices differently. By its nature, it's professional development. It asks you to think about what you need for your careers and build from there. And finally, it sets the stage for conversations and actions at an individual, an organizational, and a systems level. So with that bigger context, I want to shift it back to Mitzi so she can share a few more particulars about this and maybe some more of your thriving statements.
So thank you, Heather. Wow, for that in-depth analysis on mental models and patterns and structures. Y'all, when my best friend from Philly, we used to work together in New York City, she sent me information about Artists Thrive and asked me if I was going, and it was happening in Kentucky as its inaugural event. I was like, what? As I learned more about it, I couldn't believe it was actually happening in my home state of Kentucky. And then I began to become aware and read the materials of their intention. And as I read this, I was in awe. I mean, because I'm the daughter of two performing artists here in Appalachia. They were born and raised and they've traveled around the country. You can probably hear the trains right now. Sorry. Anyway, but growing up with artists and reading the materials and the information from Artists Thrive about the issues, the struggles, that many of the things that my family and I had gone through, not necessarily what I want to continue for myself, but because I used to be an administrator in New York City of a public school, and now I'm 100% focused on my art form. And so now I am revisiting my family's mental models and working on changing our legacy of being skilled and talented, yet underpaid. So I'm taking this to thrive. That's what I hope to do for my legacy. And so when I read through the materials from Artists Thrive and I have met the community and this reflective tool for me, it's been really astounding. And I'm like, how did they get in my brain? How did they know? So let's see what else you guys are saying about Thrive. And Batya, thank you so much for giving me the phonetic pronunciation of your name. I appreciate that. Anybody else? New stuff about thriving? Someone said, Samantha said, why don't I know about this already? And mental transformation. Yeah, it feels like we're all going through a transformation now, right? But so appropriate that we really look at ourselves as artists in our practice. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on and keep writing in, and I'll keep looking. So, as you've got an understanding, or as I was saying, sorry, let me, 1 second. It's one thing, y'all, to create art, but then to articulate things in such detail, and the process, the practice, the journey of how we create as artists, the thoughts and feelings that we have. And so I feel like why I'm so excited and invigorated and inspired and supported and speak so highly about Artists Thrive is because they were able to codify, articulate almost verbatim. Like, what? How did they know? How did they get inside our brains? And it blows me away. So we have free resources that you can use, artistthrive.org. That's what the website looks like right there. And so I'm excited to show you more about this rubric. And so being a former public school administrator, I know about rubrics. I don't know if you do, but here's what the site looks like, this free resource. Next slide. So Artists Thrive. You can enter the site, this tool, as an artist or work with artists. So for instance, I gave my mayor in Huntington, West Virginia, that I work with artists. So he and the community and the board, advisory board could really start to examine, how are we supporting artists? They love us. We bring the soul to everything, but then do you want to pay us and check in on us and make sure we're thriving? Because now I'm going to tell you, I need that support. And then, or go to the part where it says, I am an artist, and go through and answer the questions at each level. It'll populate where you are with things. And then you can see there's lots of resources on there. You can see people's stories, video, resources about how people move from different parts of the rubric, from struggling to thriving. Next slide. Heather.
So Mitzi just shared a little bit about what is a rubric, but you may not know what one is. And that is perfectly fine. Most people in the arts world, many artists don't know what one is. We have spent a lot of time over the last few years introducing rubrics to the art community. And if you're a teaching artist or someone who's worked in education, you're probably very familiar with rubrics because they're used across the board in education. But the rest of the world doesn't really use rubrics. So on the left here on the image, you'll see a real simple framework for what this is. Rubric is just a fancy word for a grid that lays out your plan to allow you to get to a point of success. The top here, you'll see in blue, sets out the spectrum. In this case, the framework says, from lack of success to status quo, to success to outstanding success. I have seen rubrics have only 3 of these columns, and I have seen a number of times that there are 5 columns. So it all really depends on how you're using it and how many different categories you feel like are needed in the work that you're doing. Under each of these headers, you would take a row and build it out with a very specific description of what that looks like. So what does lack of success look like in that item that you're framing out? What does status quo look like, or success, or outstanding success. Okay. And then it is up to you, when you think about this, to think about what actions you would take that would move you from the lower level, the left side of the rubric, up to a higher point. It's not necessarily something that you're in a lack of success and the best you can do is move up to status quo. You may change something of what you're doing and jump instantly to outstanding success. But by having a path for it, having an understanding of what it looks like, you can set out your plan, because you sit down and you write this out from the start. And then you can plan backwards with a vision of what it looks like to get to that point. So if we'll go to the next slide, what we did here was actually replace that sample, the generic framework, with a row from Artists Thrive. So this is from the money category in the I Am an Artist tool. And you'll see the Artists Thrive spectrum goes from artists give up, artists struggle, artists survive, and artists thrive. And the text on this row is really around donating your art and understanding the value of your art. So on the give up level, the statement is, I am constantly pressured to donate my art and my time, and there is little or no discussion about it. In struggling, I am sometimes paid for my art, but I am uncomfortable discussing fees and prices. Surviving, I ask for a living wage, and I am comfortable saying no when offered less than that. And then thriving, you can see the aspirational level in this. I am paid a living wage unless I choose to make a donation. I pay fellow artists a living wage, and I advocate for fair pay. So all of this is setting up a frame for you to think about, what would you do? What actions would you need to take? And if we flip to the next screen, we want to hear from you right now in the chat here. I've changed the headers to add 1, 2, 3, 4. So just drop in the chat where you feel like you land right now. There is absolutely no judgment on this. This is a snapshot of a moment in time. Simply by reading this question, you may start to think about actions you can take, a frame that maybe you would do differently. If you feel like you're doing well and surviving or thriving here, maybe you would be willing to add into the comments an action you've taken, or a resource you have, or something you've done that others artists that are watching this or participating in this call could use for themselves in the work that they are doing. So what we see also is, by reading this tool, you start to ask questions like, well, what is a fair wage? I don't know what a living wage is where I live. Well, if you go onto the artiststhrive.org, under the resources area, you can actually locate a wage calculator that determines price of art. And there's another calculator that was created by the Teaching Artists Guild that helps determine, based upon census figures, what a wage in your area would be. So there are tools on the site to help you start to establish and understand what it looks like for you to be able to thrive where you live. I'm seeing in the chat a bunch of 2s and 3s, and that's often where a lot of people land, especially when we talk about donating our art and how we manage that. So I know some artists who have gone and set a policy that they actually put right on their website that talks about how and when they choose to donate their art. They may say, I only donate 20 pieces of art per year, or I only donate art to nonprofit fundraising events that support education. Just like a nonprofit organization does, an artist can put on their site what their qualifications for providing a donation would be. And then you can start to see a variety of different ways that you can take control of your career. And it doesn't start to become, or it stops becoming a frame that you feel guilty if you're not donating, or you say yes all the time with no structure around it, but a way for you to think a bit differently around how you donate your work. So the idea here, again, with an Artist Thrive, is about starting to have that framework for a conversation, a framework that you could share this with other artists and together have those conversations. And so I'm seeing some comments here. Art Circuits talks about sometimes the relationship with money is difficult. And we find that artists don't like to include an inquiry bottom in our digital press releases, what they should, but it's their decision. So there's lots of ways that organizations are trying to address or think about these things, but as an artist, you can take control and think about that. We're going to go through a few more rows from Artists Thrive to give you a feeling of what the site is like. And I'm going to turn this over to Mitzi to share a few more.
So awesome. You guys are getting an understanding of how this rubric works, right? And so, now I saw it's good that we pushed right into the money thing, right? Because it just seems so taboo in general. But then for artists to feel you on the struggle. And there are many other categories in the rubric so that we can work and be inspired to get to thriving with our pay rates and our money. And then there may be other places like planning and capacity, for instance, like maybe you're really thriving in this place. So there are lots of, as we talked about, you said earlier, being a holistic citizen as a creative, working in your community, loving your family. Here's a way for us to reflect as artists to be more holistic and not just gauge our value because we're not getting paid everything we want right now, but maybe we give in a whole lot of other places we do really well. So let's take some time right now. Planning and capacity. So a 1 through 4. Giving up, that you see the future as scary and you try not to think about it. And that's challenging for me. It was, especially over this isolation period, the emotional roller coaster I was going through. I don't know about you all, but so planning and capacity again. Are you struggling? Are you surviving? Do you have a written plan with long-term goals relevant to your practice and your mission? Or are you already at thriving with this, that you have a sustainable written plan and it doesn't matter if we go back into isolation, you can still get at those plans. Let's see. I'm going to look down and see. So in regards to planning and capacity, are you a planner? Are you an intuit? My mom was always like, she's an intuitive artist, performing artist, but she's thrived for 55 years. But it's a little scary sometimes when I try to talk to her about planning. She's like, I don't want to sit down. I'm like, but I think in some ways we could improve this. Now, that's not an easy conversation for my mother, but I think it's important. Just signed up for the email, Paula says. Anybody else want to give a number about where you are with planning and capacity? Vicky, yes, an emotional roller coaster. That's right. I mean, let's be honest. It's been like that. Some people I'm seeing are in the 2s with planning, that you make plans and you're working on them. 2 to 3, I have a loose plan. Yeah, some people say if you can say it, right? If you can say it, you can call it into being. If you write it, it's more affirming. And then as my papa always said, y'all, here's something else, which we've all learned in these past few months. My papa always said, he said, the best laid plans of mice and men, because sometimes we can have the best plans and then we just have to learn how to be flexible like the bamboo. So my new general vision statement, I need to make more specific. Yeah. And sometimes, how about this? I see 2s and 3s. I see 1s. 3s and 4s, but it doesn't mean I earn enough to support our family. I am so with you on that. That's where I'm working towards. Like planning capacity, great, but I still need that money. And it sounds like y'all too. And as people you saw on all the social media posts and national media sites where they were saying artists may help get us through the isolation. Yeah, but we may still be struggling more than y'all at the corporate sector. All right, next, that's a whole nother. Next slide, please. So what about power? What? Power. Anybody watch that show, Power? Okay, so what about power? Here's one place. A couple years ago when I decided to come home, the mayor asked me, or actually the United Way and our Tri-State River Valleys asked me to be on a planning committee that we started a whole initiative about dismantling racism in our tri-state area. Never in my life, in my hometown, was I ever invited to be part of the solution of the very thing that impacted my family and my life so deeply. So it was very empowering, and still to be part of the Mayor's Diversity Equity Committee. And it's been about 4 years. So where are you with power? Are you giving up because you allow assumptions and biases and cultural heritage and sexual orientation to silence your voice and curtail your impact? Or are you in a place at 3 where you ensure that your voice is heard in all spaces and that you work in and inhabit that? So power, that's something maybe we are redefining that for everybody on the planet. how you're able to express yourself, when you can, when you feel comfortable, when you feel safe. But just to keep that in mind, I love that we added that to the rubric, because again, there may be ways that you're working in community that really give you a sense of security. It may not be financial yet, but for me, being at the table and helping design what my community does next really helped ground me since I've been home. So I see some 3s and 4s. Still healing. Some people are still healing. Lord have mercy. Correction, I work on my photography constantly, but don't know how to plan its future. Yeah. So can we move on then to, so again, you're going to visit artiststhrive.org and you can go in and see what other people say about each of these categories on the rubric. So practice. This one. Are you working in isolation, which we all probably get in that rut or that space with no conversations about your practice? Or are you connecting with other artists and conversations that lead to practice? You know, this is what coming home to Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, in the Appalachian Mountains, we do art, but not a lot of people think of it as a profession. So how was I finding people? I was driving to Louisville and Lexington, Columbus to try to find more people. So to support me and help me get back into my practice. Cheryl saying on Power, to go back a little bit, that she's a 4 and that Art Start, mentoring emerging teenage artists, participants from all different cultures, economic and social, sexual orientation. Yeah, that stuff can feed us too as we continue, spiritually feed us. What did Govi, I said, I don't know what Bhatia was saying, but I like to speak up for others and need to speak up for myself more easily in situations. Yeah, sometimes it's easier to be part of something that way rather than talk about yourself and identify your own needs. What about practice? How are y'all doing with your practice? Like, do you make time for rehearsal or, your clay making or sculpture making or painting or writing or practicing your instrument? Yeah, I think we have a little bit of a delay, but practice. So keep posting because we still want to see, even if we have a delay. And can we go to the next slide, or is that the last question that we were asking about? Yeah. So Christine was saying, I try to make plans, but too often it ends up pushing me into stress and I end up with too tight, overworked art. Gosh, it's such a, isn't it a catch-22, y'all? Like, Lord have mercy, like God, whatever you believe, God, Allah, Jah, Yahweh, kinetic energy that's always testing me. Like, to some of our best work comes when we're most relaxed and joyous, but then sometimes it comes from pain, and then you plan, and then you have to hear about social media that you're supposed to be doing, and you're supposed to be writing, and you're supposed to be finding this list, and it's supposed to be doing this, and then I have become a nervous wreck at different times. What about you? So it's a balance to be an artist. So again, I'm here to remind you, as with all those other organizations and Art Hive and Angela and Jesse and Madeline and Jim and all those people, there are supports for us, and that we don't have to be in isolation and we can find inspiration from others. And by going to artiststhrive.org, there you see those assessments are there and lots of stories. You don't have to do this completely alone. Lots of resources here for you. Let me see. I see some more practice. Good. Here comes some of the practice stuff. That you're at a 3, making time for your art work and proactive amidst many different art involvements. Yeah. And I don't know, it took me a long time to realize even here how diverse my pie of creating could be. So I teach dance at my mom's dance studio. I'm here now. You can probably hear the tumblers just walked in and they're doing their tumbling on the mat. So I teach dance. I work with Artists Thrive. I have my own business. I'm writing a screenplay. And I realize now, no wonder I couldn't sit at one job my whole life. It's because I like the diversity of even the way I can be an artist. Yeah. Keep them coming. I'd like to turn this now back over to Heather.
Awesome. Thank you, Mitzi. So hopefully you're seeing in the structure of Artists Thrive that it's really designed to ask you to think about where you're at, where you'd like to go, and what changes maybe you want to make in order to support your career. So the website here is up on the screen, and we're just going to give you a few slides here that give you some context of what all there is as a resource available to you on the site. Up at the top, what the circle here is sending you to the self-assess area. So in that self-assess area, you can choose to take the survey as it currently is. And there's a variety of questions. There's also the ability to jump in at a particular category and just answer the questions for that category. You don't need to complete the whole tool. You may not be ready to think about all of the areas. Maybe you want to focus on the practice point, and you're not really ready yet to think about power and the questions around that. Or maybe you want to jump in and answer a bunch of questions. Completely up to you, totally flexible as to how you want to look at it. A note from the website aspect is that the survey tools on the website show up truly as a survey with buttons that you click based upon the level you feel you're at. And then if you scroll all the way to the bottom of that survey, you'll see the rubric type grid come back up, and it'll highlight your answers so you can visually see where you land and what it would look like for improvement, and start to help you think about the actions you would take. From the self-assess area on the website, you also have the ability just to print out the survey as a document. That's helpful for a lot of folks because you can sit and actually circle your answers or write on them and think about some additional work you would do or actions you would take. You may also find, and this is great with the printing of it, is that the way we frame it or the context that we put on it doesn't really work perfectly with the framing you have for thriving as an artist. And it is perfectly fine for you to take and X out that statement and write your own. It's a starting point for you. And because this is a national tool, not every row is perfectly going to speak to you. We've tried our best to be discipline neutral, but there are some times when you read it, you think, well, this is really designed more for a visual arts than a performing artist. We'll change it, make it work for you and where you're at and what you're looking for. There is also the opportunity on the website to print a blank template and start from scratch. Another great way for you to think about this is, an area or a category that we don't go that deep in, or you're really focusing on right now, or a community project that you're doing and you want to think really specifically around that work. So all of those tools are available for you on the website there. If we flip to the next slide, you'll see the next tab here on the website provides you with an area full of information. There are frequently asked questions that we've received that may help you as you're trying to think through some aspects of the site. There is also a number of workshop activities that you can do. A lot of those were put up before COVID. So in some cases, they were really designed for people to be together and in a place. But in a lot of ways, they're easily transferable to a Zoom meetup and those kind of conversations. There is also the opportunity to download a number of resources that would help in having conversations around Artists Thrive. If we flip to the next slide, you'll see the third tab here is around taking action. So under the taking action, you can actually read dozens of stories and watch videos from artists and administrators all across the country who have responded to questions that directly align with the tools. So there is a great video. I think it's actually the first video when you log into that area that is from an artist in Kentucky as well, who talks about her scheduling and how she programs out her day in a way that makes her be truly thoughtful in how she's spending her time, to the point that she programs on her calendar an alarm to go off when it's time to go to bed. And for her, that's the moment where she has to be very deliberate and intentional to say, I'm actually not going to bed now. I'm doing other things because it is more important for me right now to do something else rather than a self-care piece that I know that I need so many hours of sleep. So there's some great stories and ideas for you on the site as well. There is also an area to redirect to a wiki that is chock full of hyperlinks to other sites and resources that you may find helpful as well. And then finally, in this area, we ask you to submit your own story. How are you managing in certain ways? Is there a row or a question or a description that really made you think and you want to share to the benefit of others to think about that as well. Additionally, on the site, there are some more areas. The very first one is around COVID resources. The one next to the circle here is all around our summit, which I'll mention in a minute. So you can go and explore that website as you choose. But we kind of want to end this time before we get to the Q&A with what's on the next slide here and just share out for you how we're hearing about how Artists Thrive is being used all across the country. It's being used for artists to have self-reflection and other thought times to think about it, to think about how maybe you could apply for a grant or think differently in your work. I see Art Circuits just commented here. How about practicing mindfulness? There's some great classes, it looks like, at the Low Art Museum, and that's really important for artists as well. A new section that we have not yet put out on the site is all around self-care and has that all built into it. From the Artists Thrive standpoint, we're also seeing organizations use Artists Thrive in strategic planning, in developing an understanding at the start of projects and collaboration, and how they make sure that everyone has the same goals for a project and the work they're thinking about. We're seeing the power category, especially from the I Work With Artists tool, be used to start the conversations around racial justice and equity in our work. And actually on the homepage of Artists Thrive, you can print out those questions and it gives you a template for how you can create some action steps using those categories and those questions from Artists Thrive. But what you can do right now is you can form your own cohort of artists that you would bring together to do the survey and support each other. It's really great when you read those questions out and you think about your own answer, but then you hear from others and how they're doing. And very quickly, it becomes a peer mentorship opportunity for others to work through it. We are also seeing some organizations use it as a way to convene artists for conversations as well. You can pick a category, as I mentioned, and create an action plan. You don't necessarily have to do the entire tool, but jump in wherever it is most appropriate for you right now. And then, as I mentioned, whether it be through others or submitting through our website, share your experiences with using Artists Thrive, with what certain rows have caused you to think differently. And we're regularly hearing all across the country from artists, administrators, educators, funders, in different ways they're using these tools. So we hope that you'll also be willing to share out some of yours as well. So on this final slide, before we get to Q&A, we list the website once again. And I know that Paula Taylor put in the comments that she has already signed up for our newsletter, but we invite you to do that as well. It's a bi-monthly newsletter that includes a lot of resources and tips. Right under the login for the newsletter on our website are actually the past newsletters. So you can click on there and see resources that were shared in the months leading up to this. And then also we host a virtual summit. Normally it's in person, but this year it will be virtual. That is at the end of September, and information for that is actually coming out into the world next week. So you'll find out more about that in the newsletter. But as was asked a few minutes ago with Art Circuits, is part of the virtual summit will include conversations around mindfulness and self-care for artists as well. So with that, I think we have time for some questions, and I think Mitzi and Angela are both going to join me here on the screen.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, sorry. So everybody interactive is great. And I'm really excited all the knowledge you're one. So I'm just making sure. So one of the questions I saw, you spoke about the model, and I saw that you spoke about having a mental model based around that iceberg model and shifting your mindset. So I wanted to know, out of curiosity, how can artists, especially during these difficult economic times, address that mental model to themselves and also not become so overwhelmed, because there will be another side to all of this. So what do you say to those artists that are looking at this and say, I want to do this too, but how can I really get started?
Yeah, so I think in terms, sorry, I'm completely echoing in my ear here. I don't know if you're echoing on you as well.
No, you're fine.
Okay. I'm going to keep talking then through the echo. The use of the iceberg model is a great way for you to think about what is really underlying what's going on. And so I'm sorry. I'm noticing people are commenting. There's also an echo.
Oh.
So Mitzi, maybe you muting for a second might also help us.
I can mute on my.
Let's see if that helped any. I think that might have been where the echo was. So if we turn off, if we're not talking, there we go. So the idea with the iceberg model is to ask you to think what's underlying the work. So especially right now when everything's upended, when things are very different, it's a chance for you to stop and think about what is actually rocking you in those ways. Does it come down to the income shifts? Is it about how you're now feeling more isolated? And it gives you a chance to dig below and say, what can I do in that deeper way that will help me shift? It's not necessarily about thinking about how do I do it for just now, because in a lot of ways, those shifts are going to permanently help you moving forward. So, obviously, if it's about income, there's some questions around how do you just replace income, but it's also asking, how are you framing money? How are you spending money? How are you thinking about that? And there may be some larger shifts you have to do in your life in order for money to not be as much of a pressure. And that may come to things like you need to reduce some costs in some ways. But then you also have to think about, are you holding onto those costs differently? So really about what is it making that you have to do to feel like you're thriving in order to be able to move forward, even during this time. So I'm not sure if that fully answers the question, but I think it's about you going deeper in what's behind the concerns that you have.
I also want to add into that, one of the things that I also read from in the comments, like you said, Angela, so many people were all going through it. Perhaps even this group that I'm seeing that seems to know each other online. What if y'all took that empty rubric and got together on a Zoom or some other site to come together for half an hour over the weekend or next week and take some piece of that? Because I personally feel so much better when I can get perspective that I'm not the only person who's going through this alone. All the issues, even that just helps ground me. So, sometimes people say change your mental model, which is great. But if you're in a place where you're not able or you don't have enough energy to do that, sometimes what you need is just hearing from others. And Artists Thrive Again comes up with these tools that you can pull people together at a coffee house, or outside or in the park or online. So again, you can look at that and talk together and make some shifts or find support.
That's perfect. And I wanted to ask during, when I was watching your presentation, when you had the rubric up, I noticed that the arrow was not going in the direction that most people want to go, which is going the normal way. If I'm backwards here. So I liked that. It made you really stop and think about everything. So especially for creative people who are just in the mode of making, how do we really stop and take a moment to really assess ourselves? And I know you've addressed this before, but I think also talking about it again really can be helpful for people that are thinking, well, I see this arrow, I want to follow, but now how do I get started?
Thanks, Angela. It's a great question. The nature of a rubric is you spend some time, just like you would in strategic planning, just like you would in making your action plan, to build that out. And generally, when you start and you build your own tools, you start at that status quo, that second from the left spot. And then you ask yourself, what if things got a little bit better? What do I want to see that look like? And you do that description. And then you stop and you say, well, what if it got worse? And then you build up the far left. And then you say, wait a minute, what if I could blow this out of the ballpark and I could have this really thriving lens that I could put on this? And then you build out that higher level. Okay. But you've done all this before you started doing work. But now, because you've laid it out, you've already set yourself up for what is not a good process for you. What do you not want to see happen? We often joke and say, if you're doing it for an organization and this is about staff or board members, you put the behavior you don't want to see at the bottom. You're like, we have already laid it out. We don't want to see this, but we've put it there in writing. So if we slip there, we can call it out that it's there. And then when you think about it and you start your projects, you can see what a path almost is like already. In some of those examples, you could see, well, what if I actually did a strategic plan? How could that help me? What if I set aside more time to create art? How could that change my thriving lens of what I'm doing? But the idea behind this is it's not a stagnant tool. It's something you constantly reference and go back to. And if you feel like you're approaching thriving, well, guess what? Thriving just became your status quo, and now you're building even further down the path. So you continually build on it, but because you build at a point in time looking forward, it allows you to then plan backwards from where you are and how you can get there. So it doesn't matter what it is. I've seen great rubrics for putting your kid to bed. And they set the framework out that says, if I have to tell you 20 times to go to bed, that's not good. That's the bottom of the tool. But if you go to bed without being asked, you brushed your teeth, you did everything, you're in the outstanding level. Great job. And it frames it out that way. So you can use rubrics for every part of your life. And once you start to dig into this, it becomes really clear how helpful that is, because you actually lay out your expectations from the front end, and then you can plan towards that.
I like that. And what it makes me really think about is how much we have to slow down. So I know that when artists are creating, we have this feeling that I've made something, I got to get it out right now. Let me show my work. And what you're saying is to slow down and just take a moment to reflect and use assessment tools, because I know what happens to me a lot is you think one idea and a couple weeks down the road, just by natural happenstance, you say, you know what, I've already changed my mind. So I think slowing down a little bit really does help an artist reflect on themselves. And I know something that's really cool on Artists Thrive is is it a wage calculator? How do you suggest artists utilize this tool to their advantage?
So it's actually not our wage calculator. It's created by an organization called Wage, WAGE. And so there's that calculator. There's a few of them. There is a general salary calculator. And the most important way of thinking of those is, first off, assessing to make sure it aligns with your work in your frame. The wage calculator was designed for visual artists, so that probably doesn't work so well for performing artists, but I believe in the performing artists world, there is one as well. I'm not sure that it is on Artists Thrive, but there's honestly so many resources on Artists Thrive. Sometimes it's hard to know what all is there. And a lot of folks who are submitting ideas and resources to us as well, which everyone's welcome to do. But the most important piece of that is, if you don't have the knowledge, if you don't have the data, if you don't have that construct of what that looks like, how can you possibly know if you're charging the right wage or if you are valuing your art the way you should? There are some great folks out there, some great teachers and mentors. I know that a number of them have been involved in the Artists Entrepreneur Program in the past that help frame budgeting and ways to think about how much you charge. So there's lots of resources out there for you to think about your work, but you need to start somewhere and not just frame it on the actual supply cost, because there's so much more work and cost that goes into your work that you should be charging for beyond just your supplies.
I was just thinking about, as I'm reading more comments and talking about wage and money and raising the value of artists, what I also appreciate about the Artists Thrive Initiative, y'all, is they are not just looking at helping us to be reflective or those who work with artists, but also looking at systemic change. So in all the other the ways we're talking about equity around marginalized people, artists have always been kind of marginalized in some cultures, on some continents. But so in the US, Artists Thrive works with Americans for the Arts and other powerful organizations who have lobbies, so that we're also looking at this holistically from a structural, systemic point of view. And they're trying to get in those ways too. So be clear. I don't think anybody's trying to say, if you can only get yourself together and reflect on yourself. There are so many facets at play that create us in this moment, or have impact on us in this moment. So I just want to put that out. There's no one solution. It's that we're all getting at it in as many ways as we can, and that are healthy and inspiring.
Perfect. I want to know, do you have an opinion on one thing that you often see artists maybe fill in some of the surveys and you say, man, you know what, I keep seeing this repetitive comment or trend that maybe you can address it, you have access through your website for people to reflect on, and that you often see repeated over and over, that you say, hey, why don't you guys check this one little tidbit of information out, because I keep seeing it over and over.
Oh, I may need a minute to think about that, because I see a lot of them. Also note, because there is no submission really on the site, it's not something that we watch and kind of see. So a lot of what we hear in terms of Artists Thrive comes from workshops that are generally in person. So we see, kind of as people are in groups and talking. But without really answering your question directly, but saying that it often comes down to artists not valuing themselves in the way they need to in order to move forward. We're sometimes our biggest blocks in being in barriers in order to move forward. We have a number of comments here, and I was looking back. It's Cheryl Brown commented that she said, if I go any slower, I'd be standing still. And then the question really comes up in these kind of conversations we have is, well, what's making you go slower? And that's oftentimes that, maybe artists don't have a voice, or you don't feel that you really should be doing a certain thing, or you don't know what to charge. So it's often a frame that is artists feeling that they don't necessarily feel valued in a community. They don't necessarily value their own art in the way that they need to. And Ed said some great things earlier today about how you have to believe in yourself more than anything else, and not listen to all the other voices telling you how to do your work. And what we hope with an Artist Thrive is that you kind of take that time for self-assessment and framing it for your own measures of success and thriving. We lay it out as a template, but it's not the only way to look at it. It's not, this is the way or no way. It's just a starting point for folks to start thinking about themselves and their work and their career, hopefully in a way that supports thriving.
I want to bring up a question that Art Circuits just populated. They said, what will you consider an elegant way to talk about your price range and about self-promotion?
Can I? Yeah. Art Circuits has been a long journey in feeling comfortable, and will continue to be a journey on quoting the price for my work as a performing artist, speaker, workshop leader, filmmaker, writer. I'm getting to the point and to be comfortable with, first of all, when people inquire about my work right off the bat, now I have I tell them what the general scope of the work will be, and I immediately put a price down there. And I no longer even go, I'd like to know what your budget is. Can you, if this will work with your budget? I used to say that like 2 years ago. I don't even put that on there anymore. But if they call and they say, hey, I really want to do this, but it's really not in our budget, then I say, well, what is? Because I'm in a place right now, I can't do any more work for free. I just cannot. And I don't want to. I've done so much for free. Now I'm in a place where I will choose the one or two things. But so now I just put it out there and let someone else ask me for a price range or tell me what their budget is.
I think that's a really great point, and it shows the value of your own worth and how you value yourself. I wanted to ask also, I know you touched lightly on your summit that's happening in September. I know obviously it's going virtual, so can you tell us a little bit about what everyone might expect from the summit this year?
Yeah, so we're actually really excited about it because it is the first time it will be in the virtual space. But we are capping the number of attendees. And the reason for that is that we've seen a lot of these great conversations and conventions and summits happen around the country that have been so large they become just sit and listen, very passive sessions. And Artists Thrive is all about engagement. It's about connecting with each other, and it's about having conversation. So we're really excited about the software we're using that will allow us to enable one-on-one conversations with folks, for people to meet up and get to know other people around the country. There's actually a speed meeting option within the summit. And it will have a lot of different topics for the wide range of folks involved in Artists Thrive. So there are topics that are designed for artists, there are some for arts administrators, a few for educators, and some for funders. So it's really designed to meet people where they're at, and to provide some education, but also a chance to network and talk with others. We'll also do some deeper dives within Artists Thrive itself, so a chance for people to share some stories about how they're using it. For brand new users, that'll be a group that kind of just, again, walks through the site in a little bit more detail, and provides some context. So really deep engagement, 3 days, and it's actually September 29th, 30th, and October 1st. So it's more than just the end of September, but it's from 12 to 5, allowing for the different time zones who are participating. So it's an afternoon on each day. And then I do want to jump, just because I'm not sure with so many comments we're going to get to it, that Artworks did ask a question around the rubrics. And the question of, like, did we license the concept? Is it free to use? Rubrics have been used for years. It is not licensed, I think, by anyone, honestly. And the framing of Artists Thrive really came with the help of David Grant, who wrote this book called The Social Profit Handbook, The Essential Guide to Setting Goals, Assessing Outcomes, and Achieving Success for Mission-Driven Organizations. So if you want to jump more into Artists Thrive, a lot of people at Artists Thrive have this book. It's a really quick, easy read, and really frames out rubrics and that work well for you, with a lot of examples. That's really helpful. So I want to make sure that we got to that in the comments.
So ladies, I would like to know your thoughts that you'd like everyone to leave here with today, whether it be the mindset, the positivity, the motivation behind. What is the one overwhelming factor you'd like everyone to think about as they go into the weekend?
So I'm going to jump on this before Mitzi can, because she is going to give everyone an awesome end comment. I know it. She's always good at that. So I'll put the pressure on her to have to say the last statement here. But I think, and this comes from Mitzi's statements earlier, is you're not alone. There are a lot of people feeling the same way as you. And we all, especially during this COVID time, are in a lot more of an isolated frame. But there are a lot of other people out there who are struggling in the same way, or who were struggling and have ways that they have changed their work or overcome those struggles. So do what you can to get connected with others, form a peer network, and share with them and support each other. That's what we all need more than anything right now, is to know that there is someone who is listening, there is someone who cares, and there is a way for you to continue to get to a thriving point, especially as an artist.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. I would like to add to that, Angela, if you said walking away, what do I hope for people? Something I've been really trying to reprogram my brain a little bit. So regardless if the information came from my community, from small minds, discrimination, whatever, wherever it came from, the early stories. But I have a habit of not looking back at all the things that I have accomplished and looking and seeing that I actually did evolve. And so that I saw a scientist recently, he's a professor at MIT, his name escapes me, but we are always spiraling up, but on the spiral, you've heard this before, y'all, we're always spiraling up, but on the spiral up, even there's a down. But no matter what, there's a continuum of your life as Batya, as Carolyn, as Tanya, as Dave, as Heather, whereas Angela and Jesse and everybody backstage, we're all evolving. And we all do make movement. And I'll close with this. Dr. Sarah Gottfried, one of my favorite gynecologists, but she's really amazing scientist, Harvard, blah, 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 all that. But she posted the other day from Pima Children. We think that the point is to pass the test or to overcome the problem. But the truth is that things don't really get solved. They come together and they fall apart. And that's life, like putting them together so they can fall apart again. I feel like I'm understanding that as I'm maturing, like it's gonna come together, it's gonna fall apart, it's gonna come together. But no matter what, y'all, we're on that continuum up. So please, I say that, remember that. And again, Heather's point, you're not alone. So be brave enough to ask your neighbor for help with your air conditioning or whatever it is that you need. Please speak up for yourself and speak to others, reach out to others. And Artists Thrive is reaching out for all of us. It was great connecting with you.
Thank you so much for all of your just great energy and the presentation. And I already saw people bookmarking your website. So we appreciate your knowledge, and I look forward to learning more because I'll be on the website today. So I'm gonna say goodbye to Mitzi and say goodbye to Heather. Thank you, everybody that's been a part of today's presentation. Don't log off yet, because I have some reminders to give everybody. The first reminder is we still have one more live session this summer, so please mark your calendars right now for the finale of the series. Session number 6. We are going to revisit your action plan, and we're also going to talk about how you can have confidence online. So you will learn about these strategies and the best practices on how to be successful in your art career on Saturday, August 22nd, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And to remind you, that is brought to you by the Broward County Cultural Division. I also want to make sure to let you know there's 2 more virtual sessions that you need to be aware of. So the next one is Wednesday, August 12th. Attention, all you filmmakers and actors out there. We encourage you to join the 48th annual, or the 48th Film Project session, and we're going to interview, there's going to be a Hollywood actor, and they're going to be talking about advocacy in the arts. And this is all going to be streamed through the Broward Arts Facebook page, so you can find it there. Another event that you're going to want to mark your calendars for is Thursday, August 27th, from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Broward Cultural Division has invited the Visual Storytelling Institute to assist artists and art organizations how to engage virtual audiences, like we're here today, and how to virtually represent you and your brand. It's going to be a 2-hour session that will provide you strategies and tools through effective, relevant, and compelling content and marketing. So there's a lot for you to attend, a lot of free educational workshops. So we want to make sure that you are there and marking them down, and make sure to have a creative afternoon, and we'll see you soon. Bye.